Heroes, and welcome to another episode of the Doomloop Dispatch, this news show that covers the worst parts of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm your host, Kevin L. Jones. Sadly, D. Scott couldn't be with me today, but we are blessed. We are honored to finally have a expert on Berkeley. I've been dying to do a Berkeley episode, and we have somebody who definitely knows what's going on in Berkeley. She's a former city council member. She's a former Berkeley city manager, and she is a former mayoral candidate. And honestly, I wish that she won and not Adina Ishii, but that's my own thing. But here she is, the amazing, I can't wait to talk to her, Kate Harrison. Thank you, Kate, for coming on today.
You're welcome, Kevin. But I was not a city manager. I was actually a court executive officer. So I was a county manager. But all the same, I've worked with cities and counties for a long time.
Okay, so that was in that weird profile, the Berkeley Speaks. I think it mentioned you were a city manager. Maybe I misread it, but that was weird. Yeah, what can you do? Okay, well, thank you for correcting that. Now, first, before we get into things, I just mentioned about how yesterday it was announced that the Country Joe McDonald, a Berkeley icon, he basically kind of kicked off, what would become the Summer of Love, the music scene, basically with his Fixin' to Die rag. You know, he was days playing at Jabberwocky, a huge, important part of the Berkeley music scene. And you actually knew him pretty well.
I did. And I knew his mother, moreover, Florence McDonald, who was on our council. Her campaign theme was elect a commie to council.
So she was straight up communist too?
I think that may have been a slight exaggeration. She's a very effective council person.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, I mean, he was truly a figure here too. I mean, you could go up to Subway Guitars and sometimes he would pop in. And also his son runs Mr. Mop. So he's a true Berkeley icon. So rest in peace. Farewell and rest in peace, Country Joe. Yeah, totally.
Well, more today than ever, but okay.
Yeah. So was that your start in politics around here? Was working as a county executor?
No, my start in politics was in student politics in the 70s. I was on campus and I ran for student senate, and I was in this group called the Municipal Lobby that worked to get more student housing. Is this sounding familiar?
Yeah.
Back in the late 70s. And I also worked for the ACLU on investigating what had happened during COINTELPRO, which was the big FBI scandal where they infiltrated groups they considered left-wing, including Martin Luther King. Oh, please.
Yeah.
And, tried to create false narratives around them to ruin the anti-war movement and the civil rights movement. So those are some of my formative experiences when I was really young. And then I went off and I got a public policy degree and did a lot of work in government. I was on the Democratic Central Committee, though, and I was always engaged in other people's campaigns, but I wasn't in politics until my late 50s.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah, I even saw it in 79. Did you work on a rent control ordinance as well?
I did. I was one of the people running around trying. It was the rent control ordinance, the first one. And we got that passed. And I ran a mayoral campaign for someone, Fred Calignon, who still lives in Berkeley. Okay. When he ran for mayor, I ran the student campaign. So I was really, really, really busy in student politics here. And then I went off and did other things.
Oh, yeah. But what made you want to get involved with Berkeley politics, too? I mean, it sounds like housing issues were an issue for you from the beginning. And honestly, I mean, yeah, the university did screw things up by not building any dorms and going the German system, as they call it. But yeah, I mean, what did you see back then? What about the housing issues could you see? And what almost foreshadowed what we're doing now, if anything?
Well, actually, my master's thesis at the policy school at Cal was on the distinction between availability of housing and affordability of housing. And it was a project looking at farm worker housing in the Central Valley. And, just because you build something doesn't mean it's going to be affordable. And that is still true today. That's what we're still in the same mode. I have to go back and read my master's thesis from the mid 80s, but really we've been having the same debate forever. If we just build, will it make it cheaper? No, because housing is not like an orange. If oranges go up, I eat apples. If my housing goes up and I live here, my children are in school, my mother lives here, and I go to this church, I'm not moving. I'm just paying more and getting more crowded until I'm finally forced out.
Oh my God. So like literally you were writing a thesis against the YIMBY movement back in the 80s.
Why do you think they don't like me?
Oh man, any enemy of a YIMBY is a friend of mine. That's all I gotta say.
I want to say
Seriously.
though, there are socialist YIMBYs. There are people that believe in building a lot of housing that's affordable.
Yes.
And so, yes, in my backyard, but I would call it a YIMBY, affordable housing in my backyard, not just any old housing.
Yes, because that's what I hate. Like, especially they'll cite things like Amsterdam. They'll cite, and also like Austin, but there's all these other factors that they don't bring in, especially with the European stuff. They don't take into account how important social housing is there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we would basically need for affordable housing. We need government subsidized housing to be able, because guess what? We're building tons of stuff in Berkeley right now, and rents are not going down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's study after study showing that, like, especially the stuff in San Francisco, even their own city studies are showing that following like, just upzoning and building is not going to make the difference. They think it would take like 100 years for it to really make the difference.
Yes. By the time it trickles down, we're all dead.
Yeah.
And every African American is pushed out of town. Every creative person has had to move. So, it's great in some theoretical econ 1 sort of analysis of supply and demand, but in the real world, that's not how it works. And it will take forever. And in fact, there are academics at the Berkeley campus. There's Dr. Chappelle, who's sometimes cited by YIMBYs as talking about building more housing, which is a good, but she also explains this filtering effect that when you build a lot of market rate housing, it makes expensive market rate housing cheaper. It does not filter down to affordable housing for decades. So that's the fallacy, I think, in the argument.
Yes. And that's so important. Like, especially we need to fix things now,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. There's so much about Berkeley too, like in these recent years that I've seen, especially it's the treatment of homelessness and giving more power to the police. That really makes me feel like Berkeley's changing in a way, and the giving up People's Park. So much of it is kind of going away from the Berkeley that I thought was so cool. I mean, God, you don't even have naked people on Telegraph anymore. Like, it's totally changing.
You don't even have a chess club on Telegraph anymore because
of all the things to take away too, people play chess.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so you got into politics and the city council in your 50s. What motivated you? What did you see on the horizon?
Well, I was working with a lot of people running for office, and I had supported Jesse Ardegine when he was running for mayor. I'm the local politics chair of our political club for Berkeley called the Wellstone Democratic Club.
Oh, yes.
And I worked really hard to get him the endorsement. And when he was running, he was my council person, and he asked if I would run for council. And I thought, this is a great opportunity because we have a new group of people coming in. We had 4 new people get elected. And they had a lot of fresh ideas, and this was the moment as far as I could tell. So I thought this is a good time to do it. And we still had Chris Worthington on the council. So there were going to be 6 of us that had a very similar politics, not identical, but similar. And so I was really excited about this opportunity. And when I first got in, there was a lot of work done on equality issues that involved making sure we get 20% affordable housing. Seems like a small ask, but there've been a big study saying that was the appropriate amount. When you build 5 market rate apartments, you need an affordable apartment for the person that's inevitably going to be working to support these other people, waiters, bus drivers, school teachers. So we finally got that put into law. It had been resisted by the former mayor for years. The study was just ignored, even though it said 20% is completely affordable and actually relates to the need. So we got that passed. It was one of the first things I did in office. We passed a fair work week for employees who, if you work part-time, you had to be offered more hours before they could hire more part-timers, because they do that to avoid paying health care, which applied to the city as well. And that was a big battle with our administration. They didn't like that. We passed eventually the vacancy tax on vacant units that with more than 4 owned by a single owner.
Thank you for that.
Multiple. Thank you. I'm really proud of that. And it has shown results already. We're collecting about $6 to $8 million a year, and people are putting units back on the market. So we passed a lot of things. we were really engaged also in building new housing. So there was a plan on South Side to allow taller buildings. I was a co-sponsor of that. We had a lot of work going into building more and also treating the homeless fairly, as you say. That was the first thing that the mayor and Councilmember Hahn did. Before I got there, they had said, we don't like this pattern of chasing homeless people all over town. And the very first thing that happened the day they were sworn in as a city manager rousted the encampment that was in front of City Hall.
Oh.
It was a kind of like, you think you're in charge, I'm in charge. And we fought that battle for years. As time went on, though, and I think COVID had a lot to do with this, people retrenched from this agenda. And not any one individual so much as just the feeling of, we can't do any of these things. We're in a crisis. It's just, things are too hard. And we ended up not doing as much. We became less ambitious over that whole period that I was on the council. It was disappointing because I thought we had a really great group.
Yeah. Is that what kind of led to you to just getting out of there?
Yeah, in the end, yes, because we had elections that replaced some of the people that I had been used to working with. And then we had the whole issue of Gaza. And frankly, when Gaza came up and the mayor and Councilmember Hahn were dead set against us talking about Gaza, to the point that when anybody came, Councilmember Hahn turned her back on them. She called me an anti-Semite in public. And half my family's Jewish, so this is really hurtful to me. And she basically made it clear that nothing would pass on her watch that would ever criticize Israel. At the same time, we were in the midst of some of the members of the council wanting to undercut all of our police reforms. This is when they started bringing in the cameras, which we're still fighting about today, the flock cameras,
yes,
which I was against because I don't like the surveillance state. And we were having the protests against Gaza while they were passing these other things sort of under the table. And it really concerned me that conservative things were happening and they were able to say, well, it's hard to have these meetings because we have all these protesters, but let's just do this other thing while we're here in the back room. Let's just do this other thing. Amongst those was when they did finally do the South Side plan for more housing, again, a really good thing. They wanted to do things like claim that the dog grooming rooms and the laundry were the open space for the students. And as far as I'm concerned, students are not widgets. They are not just employees of the high-tech industry to be. They're human beings that need open space. And so I was really against, and we were in the back because of the protests. We kept moving to the back and we had reporters, but it was very hard to hear. The public couldn't hear anything. And so a lot of things were suddenly happening in this back room. And wow. I was very uncomfortable.
Oh my God, that's so shady. I didn't realize that's how shady it was too. That's so insane. Now, is the Berkeley like a powerful mayor system? Like,
no.
Is it? Oh, no. Interesting.
Yeah, but Jesse had a powerful personality and he has a very big brain and he was really good at what he did. So also I did not endorse him for Senate, which explains a lot of the dislike of me by him in the end. Even though he had recruited me and we had worked together, he voted for something called Urban Shield. Do you know what that is?
I'll go into it just for our listeners.
In the sheriff's office where they had this big thing at the Alameda Fairgrounds. They bring all these police agencies, including from overseas, Israel, Russia, Soviet Union, Saudi Arabia, people with their big weaponry. And our police had to go to this. And the video trainings were pretty racist. You know, they would show, obviously, everyone who's a terrorist was a Middle Easterner. All the victims were white. So we objected to this. And the county eventually did pull out of Urban Shield, which is a good. But I had written this measure to get us out of Urban Shield. And on the day of, he voted to stay in. And, you know, that was the beginning for me of like, this is not the person I thought I was working with. But he does have a lot of really good qualities. It's just that he started knowing he was going to run for state office. So that's how I think we kind of fell apart there. And I'm not like a born politician, so I found that confusing.
Yeah.
I found it very confusing.
You were trying to make a difference, not like get to a higher office.
Yeah. But, you know, he does have a lot of really good qualities. I don't want to undercut that, but there were some things on that and policing and finally on the housing piece where with UC, we were told we were going to have a special meeting at 9 a.m. on a Monday to vote to get out of the lawsuit against UC, which kind of meant we weren't going to be dealing with People's Park anymore. But that was not the main thing. Yeah. The main thing for me was that the university comes in and they lease these apartment buildings. It's called master leasing.
Okay.
And when they do that, they stop paying taxes. So not only are they adding people to our community in huge numbers, they are taking housing away from the rest of the community in huge numbers. And I did not see an agreement in that long range agreement plan that would say they're going to get rid of this. They said, we're going to try, we'll think about it. And I can't vote for this. So I think the only person voted against the long range plan with UC. So we just kept kind of butting heads, and that's sort of where it ended up.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, that's the thing too, is there's so much to tap into with that. But I definitely want to get into the impact of Cal in Berkeley. It seems like is that the big power in Berkeley? Are they the ones pushing, and are they concerned, they're the ones, why we had the free speech protests and all the battles of People's Park really seemed about Cal. Are they more conservative? Are the regions more conservative? Is it a conservative force in liberal Berkeley?
I think moneyed interests are a conservative force in Berkeley. I don't think it's just UC. I think that the city tends to think of itself as a stepchild to industry, and I think we're a really desirable commodity. So a couple of examples, not based on the university. For example, we allow businesses to build employee parking. We tell residents now when we build a new building, there's no parking, which I actually agree with. I think we should try to be getting off cars. Okay. But I agree with that, especially if you're near transit. But when a company comes in and says, I'm going to take this plot of land and I'm going to build a giant parking lot for my employees, we don't do anything about that, A, but B, they are also off the tax rolls because we don't charge property tax or parcel taxes for parking. And the reason we don't do this, because originally we weren't charging people for their garage at their house. But my garage is not, which is, tiny, is not the same as a big company's huge garage. Another example of that is the need for the marina, for the ferry. They are going to be taking up a lot of the parking in the area that is given to us under state trust. And we need parking for people who want to go drive their truck down there, construction worker, eat their lunch and look at the view. Yeah. We need parking for people that are bird watching. We need parking for people who are bringing their kids to Adventure Playground. And we are paying $27 million for a lot of the work associated with the ferry. And we are giving up access to our waterfront because without parking, it will be very difficult. And while, in an ideal world, if we lived in Amsterdam and we had real buses that ran all the time, we're having a transit crisis, they're cutting back.
Yep.
That might be one thing, but we don't. We're still dependent on the car, and families in particular are dependent on the car. So I see us, big guys came in, the ferry people, and they're like, but this is the deal. And we say yes. The parking thing with commercial, the big guys said we need this, and we say yes. Developers come and ask for waivers of all sorts of things when they're building these very dense projects. And maybe the density isn't the big problem. The big problem for me is they're asking for waivers now of labor rights. They're asking for waivers of the arts fee. And I know that Senator Argan's actually concerned about the labor rights piece, and he is working on that. But they are waiving the basics, and they come to meetings and say things like, well, it'll make the project cheaper. Yeah, you know what? Slave labor would make the project cheaper. Building it out of cardboard would make the project cheaper. That isn't the way we do standards. And we are just giving up in the face of these moneyed interests, I think. That's my feeling. So I don't want to say it's just UC. It's a bigger thing than that.
So would you say Blackstone is actually a bigger issue than the university? Yeah. They're the big ones. I know, it's kind of crazy because that's truly what it is. That I see is how powerful real estate interests are in Berkeley. Now, I've been told, though, I actually was having a conversation with my brother-in-law, and he was saying, well, that's because the city is so dependent on property taxes that there's no real industries here to kind of make up another side of that. Is that a correct viewpoint on how Berkeley operates in terms of its tax base?
There is a big reliance on property tax and the hotel tax, but also sales tax, which we lose when we lose retail. But if that were true, then these companies that put in giant parking lots should not be getting a break. Yes. If really what we cared about was property tax, we would change the municipal code, which I recommended with former Councilmember Wozniak, that we change the municipal code to say that they pay. on parking, because our goals are a car-free society, or at least a better environmental society. And yet, because they're big, we say, oh, well. So if that were really true, I don't think that would be true. If that were really true, I don't think they'd let the university master lease the way they do and take it off the tax rolls. I think it's something different than that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, because I didn't understand that too, because I do know I guess there also is, like, he was saying that, like, oh, whenever there's so many startups coming out of Cal now, but they don't stay in Berkeley, and that's why that's the hit. But could it just be factors like it's just too expensive to live here?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of that, and that's why we have to build social housing. That's why we have to do projects like the school district is doing for teacher housing. We have to focus on the groups that have been denied housing. So we know, when we look at the statistics, that we built over 150% of the required market rate housing required by the state standards, and we built 26% of very low income, which is good. We're building housing for formerly homeless. We built zero low income housing, zero moderate rate. So the working class have nowhere to live.
Yep.
Your first starting out professional has nowhere to live. So it is really a crisis time. And when they reference, as you said, when they reference Vienna, they forget that 70% of the housing in Vienna is social housing. It's owned by the government. We don't have that system here.
Yes.
So we have to have regulation. And
Amsterdam, which they want to cite well as like a goal, is the most expensive city in Europe. It's like truly gentrified, and students have to pile in 17 to an apartment just to be able to make it work. And that's what I'm kind of seeing too. Like, honestly, and we should actually get into kind of the vacancy tax and the reporting on it, because it could be disputed. They try to claim, no, we're filled up. But then honestly, when you go on, there are so many vacancies, especially in these new apartments that I believe are really geared more towards the students and are expensive as hell. Like for a studio, you're looking at $2,400. I mean, that's insane. When I was going to college, my studio, which, the size of a closet, was still $400 a month.
Yeah. I won't tell you how much I paid, because you'll all kill me, but it was ridiculous. But I would say that actually the numbers show that that's not correct, that the larger buildings are vacant, because the definition of vacancy in the vacancy tax is for more than 180 days.
Oh.
They're vacant in the summer. They don't want to rent to non-students. Like farm workers, you hire people from other countries as farm workers, not just because they're less expensive, but because you can say to them, you don't like it here, I'm calling ICE. Students, you don't like it here, we'll evict you. They don't know their rights. They aren't the same as older tenants who have a sense of having some right to this to live in this property, understand there's rent control, et cetera. So I think of it as more, they only want to rent to students. Also, they can double and triple them up more, other adults wouldn't do that. So, they're renting units that are all furnished. And so people come in and just sleep there. They come in, they have everything. And that's really good for students, actually. It's hard to set up your own household as a student, but it doesn't work for anybody else.
Yes. So. And I do want to say, it is nice that at the end of the school year, you're not seeing the piles of mattresses on the street corners anymore.
That's a really good point. We have microwaves on our block.
Yeah, it was totally. I mean, because that's a lovely thing about Berkeley. It's like everyone is just like, you don't want it, put it on the street corner. Somebody will grab it, and do something with it. But like the mattresses, they would never get picked up. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I think that's a lot of it, that really the vacancies are not in those buildings. But we have two buildings just in the district I used to represent that are 16 to 20 units, have been vacant for over 20 years. The whole building. We're not talking about an occasional unit, or it's not normal turnover. It's not like it became vacant and they rented it out. This is like not rented. Yeah, not rented at all.
Do you think they just don't want to cover the fixing it up? Like the cost to keep to repair and that kind of thing?
They pay pre-Prop 13 property tax. On this one building I'm thinking of, they pay 1/12 of what I pay for my house. So in property tax. So they're like, it's a hassle. A tree fell down in those major storms a couple of years ago, and the city had to clean it up. They never showed up to deal with it. They're just like, it's a nuisance thing to them.
Mhm.
But it's also a nuisance thing for us, because then we end up with blight. We end up with these properties, there's graffiti everywhere. There's the fallen tree. There's, the neighbors are finding, unfortunately vermin in their house because it's in this lot. And so we're really not, to me, the idea of the vacancy tax is not just to because they could pay for it. It's because I want them to fix them and rent them out. Because
Yes.
unrented housing is a blight on our community.
Yes. But land banking is real too. People just kind of putting stuff aside, maybe waiting for rent control to go away. I mean, that's what we saw in Argentina, which was crazy. But yeah, there's so many factors too that people on the outside don't understand. Like, they just think like, oh, we got an apartment building, of course they're going to want to rent it out. Like, why would they just sit and not make money off it? And it's like, oh no, there's plenty of other ways to make money on it. And there's also too just other factors that just makes it seem like they don't want to rent it out.
Well, the other factor that come to find out that really was driving a lot of this was short-term rentals, because you're not allowed to under our code, short-term rental, what was formerly a rental unit. If you had tenants, you couldn't turn around apartment 1A and make it a short-term rental. So they were just saying, well, this thing isn't available for rent. It's vacant. That's what they were telling the rent board. It's vacant. We don't have any tenants. And then you go to their mailbox and it says Airbnb on it. So we have found a way. This vacancy tax helped us with a way to stop that happening. Okay. So that is a really big good. And the reports from the rent board show there's something like 1,200 more units on the market than there were before. I mean, you'd have to get those exact numbers from them, but they had a recent report on that.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Well, now what about that vacant building, the life science building that's over on Aquatic Park? What are your thoughts about that? Because it's like,
oh yeah, yeah, that's a big problem. After that happened, well, first of all, I hate the fact it's on Aquatic Park and that the parking you go in by the park, it's just ruined the whole way it looks over there. Absolutely. But beyond that, nobody rented it because the biotech industry is having some issues. And so the mayor had suggested a tax break for new biotech firms, which I did vote for originally when they're very small and they get a grant from the federal government and they don't really, former graduate students want to start something. That's fine. But then he wanted to expand it to be regardless of how much money they brought in. And I was really against that because it was really to kind of help get these buildings filled. We're going to make it cheaper for the biotech people to stay here. But that's what I mean. We're always going, oh my God, how can we attract these private sector people? What are we going to do? What tax break are we going to give them now? And I'm like, I think that's the wrong way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, especially maybe don't build a thing if you don't have somebody guaranteed to come in too. This seems pretty smart to me. Oh man. Okay. Well, so then let's also get into the homeless encampments, the RV stuff. That is something that's been such an issue for Berkeley. And you would think Berkeley being Berkeley, it would be a much kinder place, but it seems in recent days that it's getting way more harsh. We're kind of following, the Grants Pass decision and just go like, let's just sweep them away. We don't need to see them anymore. I mean, with the RVs on 6, the encampment on what was the Ohlone Park? Yes, on so much of that, and it's. Could these things be handled better? And who is really pushing for this stuff? Is it because of real estate interests and property values going up and curb appeal?
Yeah, well, there's a street over, I think it's Carlton, over by Bear, and they were unhappy because there was a few homeless people living there selling things. They actually had really nice stuff. I bought some from them, but anyway, I don't know where they got it from, but anyway, they lived there. It didn't seem like a huge mess to me, but it was right next to Bear, and the city gave Bear the street. Wow. They gave them a public street. And I just have serious issues with that. You cannot grant public land to a private entity as a way to clean up a homeless problem. So there is something about that. Now, I want to be sympathetic, though. It is really tough. I mean, honestly, I live right downtown, and we have really a wonderful neighbor who's homeless, lives in a tent on my street, and I could care less because he's a nice guy and he's pretty neat and all of that. But I do think the situation on Harrison was pretty tough. I mean, there's a lot all in one place. And it's pretty grungy, and there were problems with Furman. So I have mixed feelings about it. So I think that the original intention was to support closing an encampment if it were dangerous. So we had one on Milvia, and the bricks were falling off the building. Well, clearly somebody staying there is going to get killed. So we closed that encampment, but we offered them housing. That works to a degree, but now I see us closing encampments not necessarily with that open-heartedness. So I don't want to say I'm against always, I'm not in favor of never closing down an encampment. Sometimes it's too much.
Yeah. Well, it's just it. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, it has been ramping up, but it's also too, it's kind of one of those things where you would think Berkeley would do more for providing shelter or alternatives, and not just go to the next place, like what we're seeing in Oakland.
Oh, to be fair to us, we are the one city that had a decline in the homeless population during the last count.
Oh, great.
I actually think Berkeley has done a reasonably good job. We have some organizations that are buying these hotels and providing them to the homeless, which is a better thing than a congregant living. You get your own room.
Yeah.
The distinction is some of the organizations are really good about creating opportunities for people to mingle and jobs and a sense of community. And others are like, stay in your room. We're just going to bring you food. So, you can't treat people like they're just widgets. And I think we have to really work hard on making sure the models recognize the unique value of every human being, frankly. But I do want to stand up for Berkeley in this one thing. I think it's one area where we've actually done kind of a good job.
Okay, good. That's good. It's hard though, for local coverage. So it definitely feel like, especially news coverage. That's why I want to talk to somebody, because honestly, I feel Berkeley side, Berkeley Scanner especially, are very pro real estate. I still that fawning profile on the Diller family that Deakich did, and it's like just stuff like that where it's like, okay, you're just gonna avoid all the other bad stuff that's involved with this. Okay, that's fine, but it's just, it's I wish there was more truth out there,
Yeah,
especially for Berkeley. So, and actually let's get into too with well, actually, I just want to say, as a city council member, did you feel a responsibility to really hear out your residents? Because there's a certain city council member that I don't think does that. And I want to know your kind of perspective on it.
Absolutely. My first job was with Art Agnos in San Francisco. And the way that this worked was you never passed anybody on to some other agency. You stuck with them until their problem got solved. And that's kind of in my DNA. So my office worked really hard with all the residents. I was like, people would write to me from other districts and say, my council member never answers me. What do I do about this problem? And I don't always agree with everybody, of course. And there's some things I can't fix, but, and there's a lot of things we couldn't fix. But I think that I really tried hard to communicate with people. And I tried hard to have town halls and try to really speak to people about issues. There seems to be a tone right now in the council that the public is the problem.
Yes.
I hear that a lot. Like, well, now we're all getting along so well because that drafted public is not, here bothering us kind of thing. And I'm sad about that. I think that isn't the right attitude, frankly. And I don't even know that people are doing that consciously. It is more pleasant when people don't come and yell at you. I know that. It was terrible during the Gaza protests. It was really hard. But on the other hand, that's our job. That's the job description. You are the person that they get to yell at because, and you can say, well, that's not fair. Well, you know what? It's not a regular professional environment. You signed up to be a representative. That means something different than being, a colleague in an organization with a normal, organizational chart, a hierarchy. And so you are the only person they really know, you and the mayor. So it's kind of like, and honestly, local government is the only place they can go. It's really hard to communicate with other levels of government. So I really feel for people, and I feel they aren't being heard as well as they could. With many of the procedural rules changed about how you take things off consent, what things are put on consent versus action, how the calendars are working. It is nice they get to go home earlier than we did. Pretty tired. But I think it has undercut public comment. And I think that's been really shown a lot in this area with the corridor planning, for the 3 corridors where they want to build the very tall housing.
Yeah.
And I think there's been a little bit of a compromise that's being worked out. But, I think we really needed the small business community to stand up, because as I said, you said in the beginning, where's the money come from? A lot of it is sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have any retail, we have no sales tax. So, that's a big issue for me. And it also deals with the character of the city and what it looks like. And I don't want to lose all those small businesses. So I think that their campaign has been fabulous at really pointing out some of the flaws in what has been said. But I am concerned that a couple of council people who remain nameless, not mine, by the way, who I think is doing a good job and actually does talk to people. A couple of people do tend to say, oh, the public, they're so difficult. Or, we had one council member walk out of a meeting saying people were threatening her. And I was there. I don't think they were threatening her. They were mad. They weren't they weren't threatening her. They were mad.
Yes.
Okay. They're mad.
Yes. And she is my representative. Her name is Rashi Kursawani. And I first became aware of her when she started ignoring her own residents, her own constituents about the Hopkins bike lanes. Mm-hmm. Now, I would love to hear your aspect of your thoughts about this, because what I saw was, honestly, it's like the same thing what led to the recall of Joel and Gardio in San Francisco. His constituents said, we don't want to close the Great Highway, and he didn't ever take any of their input. And so with Hopkins, there's some cute businesses there. It's a cute neighborhood. I could understand wanting to clean things up. There's also the fears of emergency vehicles going in. But my bigger issue with it too was the fact she didn't respond to any kind of input, and is really pushing through for this plan.
Well, the real issue for me was that, regardless of what you think of Upper Hopkins, we did all vote to have a planning process for Upper Hopkins. And it was described as like a beautification process. Like, let's add, widen the sidewalks and add flower boxes and make it look nicer, because the store's been there a long time and we haven't done our part to make it look better.
Yeah.
That's how it was described. So we had a process on council, which still exists, where people put forward legislation and then we rank it at the end of the year, because there might be 300 ideas. You can't do 300 things a year.
Yeah.
So the council members vote, and we voted on that. We voted on Upper Hopkins to where, I guess, Sacramento. My real issue was when it came to council, suddenly, oh no, we want to do Lower Hopkins. Well, I think process-wise, that's wrong, because it had never been studied at all. So regardless of what you think of Upper Hopkins, Lower Hopkins had never been studied. Also, it's a more working class area. A lot of people have to park on the street. They don't have street parking. They don't have garages. And it was going to have a major impact. Having said that, I still did not agree with people who said, well, just pave Hopkins and get rid of this bike lane idea and all of that, because I think we do need a bike lane in the north part of town. Yeah. I just don't want to ruin a bunch of retail to do it. I would like to go around that. Go do the Ada bypass. Go around the block.
Yeah. What about Rose? What's wrong with Rose?
Yeah. But what really worried me was the Lower Hopkins discussion, because it suddenly was like out of nowhere, similar to something else that came up at council about adding accessory dwelling units. At the last minute, there was an idea that we'll have, yes, you have to be 3 feet away, but we'll have pop outs for mechanicals like dryers or, whatever. Well, that affects the neighbors a lot, because now you have odors and dryer heat and stuff coming onto your property. And that just got sort of thrown in. And so I have an issue with the way things are. We have a thing called a supplemental. So somebody introduces something and the council comes in and turns in a supplemental 1 the week before. That's kind of okay. They do a supplemental 2 the day before the meeting, and they might change the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And then they can do a supplemental on the dais. I think that's terrible. The public has no idea what's going on in these supplementals. And so that's where we get a lot of some of these things that just happen that you're like, how did that happen? It wasn't in the cards. It wasn't put forward by council member in a normal process. It wasn't voted on as a priority. You know, we get 2 shots. We get to vote for it, and then we get to decide to prioritize it or not. I say they. But we had 2 shots at that. That was it. That's the process. And if I were the staff, I'd be like, oh my God, they're changing it again. So I feel for the employees too. It's like, you can't, there's too much foment all the time. It's too much. And I think the mayor has done a good job of kind of recognizing the craziness that had emerged. But now I feel like we've gone to the other side of too little public comment. So we've done too little public comment, but we haven't cut down on this, what I consider gamesmanship by the authorities.
Yes, and that's so interesting. I could see that for sure, because but it also that there's a big part of that too with pushing through kind of new things about to get through. So remove public comment, remove as much as we can so we can achieve more. And that's why there's all these kind of charter reform and that kind of thing. And I haven't seen, does Berkeley pushing for a charter reform?
No, that's Oakland. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. Oakland and San Francisco for sure. Yeah. So I want to get into kind of outside influences too, because it seems like people like Ben Gould and his Eco Data Lab, the Turner Lab at up in Cal have, I would say, a pretty. They seem to have a lot of influence on what's going on. Is that? Am I maybe overestimating how much influence they have, or are they basically the power whisperers?
That's such a good question. Ben Gould ran for office, I think 3, if not 4 times, and lost.
Yeah.
And his attempt to influence things analytically is really interesting. There are groups that have opposite points of view. There's groups that look at anti-displacement, for example. The Anti-Displacement Project came in and looked at the impact of a lot of upzoning and how it would impact low-income renters. Because after all, at least like in this area and in many parts of the city, not so much District 5 and 6, but in this area, there's a lot of tenants. This area is 60% tenants. So when a building's torn down, it's not some rich homeowner who's getting hoofed.
Yeah.
It's a tenant who's maybe lived there for a very long time. And you can say, well, they can come back when we build the new units. It's not going to happen.
It doesn't happen.
It does not happen. When that's why we have such a declining African-American population. Once you move and you create a new culture and a new experience somewhere else, you're not going to move again. It's too much. So I think that there's a lack of recognition of that. And there's a kind of, I would call it a sort of technocratic approach that, like, in a perfect world, this is what economics tells us, as opposed to the real experience of people. Like, they moved and they're never coming back. That, I think, is the real experience.
Yeah.
So that's just my feeling about it. I wouldn't put it down to any one organization or person. I think it's more of an idea that also of libertarianism is very popular now. Kind of an idea that the markets are always right. The markets are not always right. That's why I went to graduate school, public policy. The markets have lots of problems. There's imperfect information. There's imperfect mobility. That's one of the biggest constraints. People, companies, jobs can't just move that easily.
Yeah.
Things don't happen that easily for people. There's the substitution effect. Doesn't work for every product, like housing. And so, there's a lot of more sophisticated thinking about economics that I think gets lost when you say, well, it's up to the markets.
Yes. Okay. So that's kind of, but that's what these groups are really kind of pushing too. Kind of like, no. Let's think about what these guys need over here. And I definitely want to talk about the upzoning too, because I mean, a big deal of removing the single family zoning in Berkeley was that it was like undoing Berkeley's racist past. They passed single family zoning to keep out the immigrants and to keep out the poor people of color. I mean, at least that's a lot was pushed,
Mm-hmm.
But then now that we've got things like, the ability to build a missing middle, as they call it, the 3-story stuff. I'm not seeing a change in demographics. I'm really not. Am I missing something? Is this
No.
okay? That's what I thought.
Here is a house on Milvia that was sold for like $1 million and was torn down, and 4 condos were built and they each went for $1 million. And that's probably not terrible. I don't have as much problem with the missing middle, because I think people want smaller places. They can only afford smaller places. So I think that's all fine. But the idea that you then brought back some diversity that is just not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not true. And again, displacement impacts tenants. That's who gets hurt.
Yes.
I had somebody tell me the other day, well, there aren't that many tenants in single family homes. That is not true.
Yeah.
There are tons of tenants in single family homes in Berkeley.
Yes.
You think you're righting a wrong with a homeowner who, by sort of making their life less pleasant or something. I don't know. But that's really not who's getting impacted. It's the people who are and the small businesses that are having to leave.
I mean, it's like they don't understand Berkeley's history. Like, literally, Berkeley became the center of the music world because they could provide cheap rooms for people living. All those Green Day, the Lookout bands, all those people were, living in rooms and houses together. They had band houses together. That was the classic thing you had.
Yeah.
And you could get one, for less than $500 a month,
And it was fun.
Yes.
This is the part that seems to be, again, that goes along with, in a way, it goes along with libertarianism and privatization. People are so interior now. People are like, oh, group homes. Who would want to live in not group home like for seniors? I mean, a group house. I want that.
Yes.
I think that's terrific. I want to go back to that. I feel like we are so atomized as people, and that's part of the problem with our politics in the country. Everyone's on their own. You're taught to be on your own all the time. It's just depressing.
Yeah. Well, but it also does help if, like, you have neighbors that can handle each other. That's the whole thing. Like, I lived in a century-old house on Virginia and Walnut, or it was an apartment building, 4 buildings, and I definitely I like to listen to my music. My neighbors hated me. I actually live next to Scharfenberger, if you remember Scharfenberger.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, totally. He hated me, though.
See, that's why
music.
That's why we moved downtown. We moved to this area that's more dense. Every other building on my block has a house behind, a cottage or something behind. Ours just doesn't happen to have that because the same family owned it forever. But this is what I like.
Mm-hmm.
I like the different, but we're going to lose that. We're going to lose the very thing they say they're trying to create.
Yes, totally. Well, that gets into something too that is a really big deal for me. So I worked on Measure EE, and that was really important to me because I could see signs that the other side was basically pushing gentrification. It was very focused on dealing with the needs of certain plans and new developments. That's what I saw the issues with FF. And also, too, a lack of fixing things of actual problems, like, honestly, especially we can get into kind of biking and how it is connected to gentrification. I actually talked with Chris Carlson about it. Chris Carlson's the guy that started Critical Mass and has basically admitted, yes, what I started, just to kind of open people's eyes to biking and how can people is now being basically used by real estate interest, and to kind of bump up curb appeals. It's actually been even documented in books like Bike Lanes or White Lanes. And so that was kind of an issue I saw because especially I talked to so many bicyclists that were like, I actually hate cycle tracks. Like, why do I want cycle tracks? And then I'd also, too, talk to people like Eric Nosborough, a blind man and disability advocate, who would be like, cycle tracks are terrible for the disabled because it's you trip over them. You can't see them. They're dangerous, But where am I going with this? But, that's do you see it? Like, what is your thoughts?
This is the way I look at it is I think we need better walking and biking infrastructure.
Yeah,
okay? We do. But recognize most people don't work in Berkeley. So if you're lucky enough to, like me, I lived 8 blocks from City Hall, so I could walk to work. That was a privilege. I'm a privileged person because of that. But and people that work at the university can ride their bike to the university. But my cousin who lives on Lower Hopkins, his kid goes to a special school and he cannot take her on a bike. He has a job somewhere else. He has to drive.
Yep.
There is no ability to recognize that the person that when they interviewed people at BART, for example, about what would it be like if we took all the parking, they did it at 11 o'clock in the morning. Who shows up but BART at 11 o'clock in the morning? Yeah. People that have very flexy jobs, so they could walk and go in and we're there. People go in the symphony. I go to BART on the symphony just for matinee. I'm not in a rush. I'm a secretary. I work in San Francisco. I have 3 children and I better get to work on time or they are going to fire me.
Yes.
And you were telling me there's nowhere to park. We are doing a classist thing. We are advantaging the privileged that haven't, or the very young who are in school here, which is fine. But we're advantaging people that have those options. Most people don't have that option.
Yes.
They have an elderly parent they have to drive around. They have something. So instead of saying to everybody, give up your car, let's say to everybody, please try to walk or bike 3 days a week. If you had 5 houses and one person gives up their car and the other 4 keep them, or every house drives that much less, but they keep their car, that's just as good.
Yeah.
We're too religious about it, but I want to see the bike infrastructure. I do. I want to see a lane somewhere in North Berkeley, which we don't really have because I'm afraid to ride my bike from my house because we don't have good bike lanes. But on the other hand, I don't want to disadvantage everybody else to do that because I think it might be fun to go on a bike ride, or I have the privilege of having a job that lets me do that.
Yes. So see, that nails it. Like, that's to me, it's like, I'm not anti-bike, but I also am just like, I see a bigger picture, like I was literally online saying like, yes, people need to drive cars and was being told I was Hitler. Like that's the other side of this is what kills me, and also a part of that too. It's like, I would be fine. Like Virginia, I mean, I swear to God, it was like the instant FF passed, Virginia was redone and had turnabouts and everything else. While I'm on Cedar and McGee, and those things are like war zones. And it's just like, could you please just distribute it? And that's why to me, that's the sign of the gentrification. And 2, you know what? The businesses I walk to and support all the time because of the neighborhood I am in? Monterey Fish, Joya Pizza, Magnani's, places that I could walk to that honestly, if they lost their parking spots, and they've even admitted this, if they've lost their parking, they would probably go away. There has to be a compromise, like just find that, and that's just what kills me too. Because when you defend those businesses, Monterey Fish is truly like, I believe they actually, are the supplier to Tokyo Fish, but they're just like,
are they?
Yeah. They're like these wonderful, that area, that little block right there is a wonderful supplier of great foods. And also too, the best thing about Berkeley, and I know some certain people have an issue with this, no chains. It's like the McDonald's and university is like really the only one that snuck through. But it's such a great place if you want to start your own business, because Berkeley wants to support you, to help you out, And but the thing is like, that's this kind of stuff that hurts these small businesses that are barely scraping by. And with tariffs and everything else going up in cost, makes it hard. They need to bump up their business more and more. Like, I don't know how the hardware store that used to be at the top of university and has moved down to, no, it's not McGee.
It's Milvia.
Milvia now. Yeah. God, that thing used to have lines going in through the business. Now I go in there every day. It's dead. Dead, and it's like, they don't understand. Like, sure. I care about the environment. There's a lot to say too about the impact of private cars on the environment, especially when you take into account actually how much more data centers hurt, how much concrete manufacturing hurts it, how much actually, what was it going to go into? Oh, just so many other, and how the fact too, that actually, if you removed oil for gas for personal cars, like you're not going to hurt oil companies. Like they actually
Yeah,
way
they're in the
more.
plastic business now. They're
Yeah,
doing something else.
plastic
Yeah,
and concrete.
it is better. It is still better for us, though, as a society to walk and bike more. It is
Yeah.
better for our health. It is better for our community cohesion. It's better to not be atomized again in a car.
Yeah.
So I want to see that, but I also want to see an equal emphasis on the walking infrastructure, because the other group that's disadvantaged by this are our seniors.
Yes.
We don't recognize that we're all going to become a senior someday. We all might be in a wheelchair. We all might need a walker, whatever it is, and that we need the sidewalks to be clear and it be easy to cross streets for us and not be hit by cars or bikes. I think we're missing a whole demographic. And I think that is my biggest issue, is I really would like much more emphasis on pedestrian safety. And again, it goes back to the business community. The person that got hit on Durant that was in a wheelchair, he was hit by a construction truck. Why? Because when they build these projects, they bring all their trucks to the same spot. They park them everywhere.
Yeah.
They should not be able to park on our streets this way. The Uber Eats people, the delivery people are double parked on Shattuck every single day and on Durant. It is so dangerous for bicyclists, for pedestrians, for people getting out of the bus.
Yes.
Let's tackle what the private sector is doing.
Yes.
Instead of always
The Amazon trucks, the UPS trucks that just park on like 6th Avenue, which is like a main thoroughfare. I just had to go through that. Like, are you kidding me? You can pull.
I would like us to spend equal time on that than telling some elderly person they shouldn't drive.
Yeah,
I think.
And now, I mean, admittedly, like there should be kind of a back end, but also to the sidewalk thing is so important. I don't think people realize how effed up Berkeley sidewalks are and how difficult it is to fix them, because you have to pay 50% out of your own pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that a state thing? And also it's not, it's just you don't have to do it. And that was the best part about Measure E in my viewpoint, was the fact that like it was going to find a way to cover 100% of sidewalk repairs that are so needed. Not just
I don't think it had enough money in it. I mean, my issue with E, I think it was understating the cost.
Yeah.
And we could have changed the municipal code anytime to say that residents don't have to pay to fix sidewalks. So you didn't need EE to do that.
Okay, so
EE was underfunded.
So what is holding that back, though? What is holding back that change in municipal? Who doesn't want to fix the sidewalks?
Now it's just money. There's so much of a problem with the deficits because of Trump. I think now the city's in a totally different mode, and I feel for them because they have real budget problems like all cities. And I think Berkeley has done a reasonably good job of balancing its budget. That's one thing. We don't have the major swings where we lay off bunches of people at once. So I think that is a good thing about our city administration. But on the other hand, they are now really, really worried about the budget. And so they're not going to make a change like that. It's going to cost the city money.
Brutal.
We missed our chance. We should have done it with EE or FF. FF should have included that, frankly.
Yeah.
That would have been a really smart idea.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess the money they don't use just goes into general fund. So, right? Is that was a part of it? Yeah. Well, man, Kate, I don't want to keep you on so much longer. I love this conversation. Thank you so much. And there's so much too we didn't get into. I know this is kind of my own personal stuff. I'm glad you're like into talking about real estate. D is always like, oh man, you in real estate. But like to me, it is a working class issue, especially with Berkeley. You hear people all the time saying we want to live here, but then you're not seeing the right solutions happening, right. But also too, there's so much to talk to too about Berkeley policing, and there's so many other options. So would you be willing to come on another time to talk with me about this stuff?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about public safety. I think there's a lot to be said there. And I just want to say that, voters are going to be asked to support some parcel taxes this year. And I would say, I love that, but please ask business to pay their fair share first.
Yes, I am with you on that. No more waivers. Come on, people. Come on, this is Berkeley. We're a community. Let's do this together, people. And that means businesses too, especially if they want to be counted as humans, Totally.
Thank you, Kevin. It was really a delight to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you so much for following us on Doomloop Dispatch. Please follow us on all the socials. We have a Patreon. Is there actually anything you want to push, Kate? Is there anything, any way to follow you?
Okay. No, I have decided to not be so engaged in social media because it was kind of ruining my life. So I took a little break and I'm actually finding it delightful. So I have to say that is not my medium. But the thing I'm really interested in right now is our work to get the California legislature to pass something they're doing in 12 other states, which is to say that corporations are not people and under our rules, and therefore they cannot spend this kind of money on elections. If we do not fix this, we were going to fix nothing. So
yes,
I will send you information about this, Kevin, and I hope that maybe you could interview some of the proponents of that, because I'm really interested in that. We've got to get to the root cause of this, and the root cause of this is money.
Yes, Citizens United has ruined this country. Fact.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'll see you later.
Yes,
bye-bye.
And thank you. And keep on fighting the good fight.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.